Hello, First UU. I'm Colleen Appel, and I'm proud to be your president. Today, we celebrate the ways your best gifts have allowed us to accomplish our 2020 goals. Goal number 1, elevate our chaplain to minister. In 2020, we increased Reverend Michelle's hours to halftime. Notice new people in our virtual spaces? Many times they are there because of our minister's powerful messages. Goal number 2, provide meaningful programs for both children and adults. Our Director of Religious Education, A.J. Fox, reports 21 families are participating in Soulful Home. That's 39 children and 38 adults staying connected to First UU with curriculum materials delivered monthly to their doorsteps. A weekly Soul Matters class for youth has also been added. 21 people are being surprised by the deep conversations that develop in our monthly Soul Matters groups. According to Doris Ewing, Tuesday afternoon, Connections with Reverend Michelle, a quiet time of reflection and assessment of personal values, is especially meaningful. Our Director of Music, Emily McKinney, has developed the skills necessary to merge the choir voices together in song. She's learning how to elevate her job from music directing to music ministry, creating space for the congregation to share ownership and vision of the music program. Goal number 3, increase church visibility through community service and social activism. From our prime location on a busy street, First UU took a visible stance, calling attention to gun violence that kills scores of Missouri children and youth each year. So members applied their crafting skills to making masks for hospitals, Ozark Area Community Action Agency, Children's Division, members and friends, our youth, ecclesia, and international students. They also made emergency warming sacks for Springfield's homeless. In a collection time of only 1 week, coats, sleeping bags, socks, gloves, hats, sweatshirts, face masks, and more, plus $500 worth of hot hands were delivered to the connecting grounds. A re-energized social action committee under the leadership of Victoria Altick is directing efforts to address housing insecurity. And we continue to care for our own with generous donations to the Congregational Relief Fund. Goal 4, keep our church building and grounds beautiful and safe. Bob Eccles and the Buildings and Grounds Committee have been preparing for your return with a new front door, ADA-compliant handrails, new parking lot lights, a new roof on the tool shed, repairs to the heating system, and a beautifully manicured UU campus. Buildings and Grounds is also thinking about our future. Next spring, they will lead a conversation about a capital improvements fund that will include a chairlift. Goal 5, increase church income and resume fundraisers. Financial Secretary Sherry Buchanan reminds us that through stewardship, we combine our time, talents, and treasure to help First UU achieve our mission. We are a generous church. Think of how quickly we raised $10,000 to fund a minister's salary. Think of how rapidly we responded to the drives for masks and warming items. We couldn't hold the ambitious fundraisers we'd hoped for, but under the leadership of Barbara Vincente and the So-So Group, we are conducting a very successful note card event. Goal number 6, promote active membership. First UU strives to be a welcoming church, encouraging our members to consider ways to be an inclusive and welcoming congregation, and offering a Wednesday evening Zoom conversation as a place to learn more about First UU. Membership Chair Ryan McCoy has gone virtual with the Pathways to Membership class. If you'd like to join us as a member, complete your choice of tasks on a bingo card of activities and be paired with a member of the congregation who will act as your mentor. Current members are welcome to use the card as a refresher course. We're First UU. We're proud of our accomplishments. We believe we're poised to be the most welcoming, most justice building, most peacemaking, and most spiritually connected congregation we can possibly be, all made possible by your commitment to First UU.
My name is Marilyn Day, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm part of our message this morning, which is considering that which has worth, a stewardship message. One of the many values my parents modeled was supporting their church community. Yes, they tithed, but in a manner that supported other organizations which further supported their convictions and values. They were active in the church community, teaching classes, serving on committees, and pledging. They gave financially to organizations combating hunger, housing, racism, and to peace and justice groups. They later spent time in their retirement volunteering for educational and church-related groups. Like my parents, I want to put my money and time where my heart is. I've told our story of coming to Springfield and First UU before. Leaving the Dakotas' cold weather, friends, and family, we moved to Springfield knowing there was a UU church family we could join. First UU Springfield is that chosen extended family that enthusiastically supported us, and we could also return that enthusiastic support. First UU was there for us when we celebrated great joy at the adoption of infant Rebecca. You were there again when Alicia arrived way too early as a preemie, and we needed a different kind of support. As our family grew, the girls had grandparents they could invite to school events. They attended memorials and learned about the cycle of life. I appreciate the way this church has allowed our family to become part of the church community. Keeping the lights on and the doors open at First UU is an obvious reason to pledge financially. Paying our staff and providing them with the tools needed for their work is another obvious reason. Yet another reason is to support those working for justice, a value I hold dear. So it's natural for me to support First UU with my time and money.
Good morning. My name is Will St. Clair, and my pronouns are he and him. I was initially hesitant when asked to speak about stewardship, feeling that maybe I'm not as fully committed to the whole of Unitarian Universalism as others in the congregation might be. Nevertheless, here goes. I have trouble with generosity, which I define here in the narrow sense of providing financial support to worthy organizations. As I think about why that might be, I can come up with two basic themes. First, I have a long personal history of living frugally in order to save for the future. Recently, I've noticed that this idea is increasingly out of date. At age 75, I find the future's here. Why would I continue saving? What would I be saving for? Second, the act of giving to almost any organization can be a source for me of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance occurs when a person holds contradictory beliefs, ideas, or values, and it's typically experienced as psychological stress when they participate in an action that goes against one or more of them. For example, I'm a member of the Nature Conservancy, because I believe that setting land aside is a valuable activity. Nevertheless, when I receive Nature Conservancy requests for emergency gifts, for example, to address the current mass extinction of species, I experience cognitive dissonance because my own reading of the science convinces me that while we may be in a sixth mass extinction of species, it's something that'll occur over thousands of years. It's not an immediate emergency. So I don't respond to that particular request beyond continuing with my annual gift. Now, I mentioned that I may not be as fully committed to Unitarian Universalism as some in the congregation. And from that, you might presume that my pledge would be a source of cognitive dissonance, that it would be stressful. Well, maybe it is. But nevertheless, I do pledge each year. As I've tried to think about why I do that, I've come to believe that I have one basic motivation. I want to support this church community to which we all belong. The values of our church are what binds us together, despite the fact that we may have variable commitments to each of those values. But something happens when we are together in community, whether virtually or in person, that suppresses feelings of dissonance. We see a wonderful diversity within our common humanity. We see the acceptance of others without reservation. We see and hear expressions of love and concern that are in themselves manifestations of generosity. And generosity is a virtue. Our community does depend on our financial generosity for the nuts and bolts of its structure, its administrative, ministerial, educational, and musical programs, its building and grounds. It depends on our generosity for the translation of its values into action. And so my smattering of ideas ends up here. The First Unitarian Church of Springfield helps me to be generous by asking for my support. And generosity is a virtue.
Albert Schweitzer said, "At times our own light goes out and is rekindled by the spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us." Good morning. My name is Babs Garcia. I'm comfortable with she, her, and they, them pronouns. I came across that quote from Albert Schweitzer earlier this month when I was gathering my thoughts to share with you all today about my own experience with stewardship. Many of you have rekindled that spark in me over the 5 years that I have been a member of this First UU family. And so it is with gladness and gratitude that I give to our community. But actually, before I go any further, I do want to be honest, and I want to tell you all that it is actually not easy for me to talk about my stewardship experience. Talking about pledging in general, like I will talk about that all day, but when I'm talking about my own experience with it, I feel uncomfortable. And I think it might just be part of that larger phenomenon that talking about money feels like taboo. But before I say anything else, I just wanted to name that discomfort, because I think it's important to pause when I feel that I'm pushing up against something that is uncomfortable, but is important, and proceed with intention and thoughtfulness to lean in to that conversation. So I'm leaning in to tell you all now that stewardship is an important and a very tangible part of my spiritual practice. For me, this is both the gift of my time, but very importantly, I think for the topic today, it is the gift of my financial resources. Of the latter, my contribution to the UU, it's not a perfunctory act. It is not something that I do just because I'm expected to. I do pledge every year, and I work to fulfill that pledge because I know that my gifts, combined with all of your gifts and the generosity of so many others, make manifest the UU values that are so important in my life and in our community. the co-creation of our faith community comes from the sharing of our gifts to make something bigger than the sum of all of the individual parts. For my monthly contribution, I've set up a routine draft for my bank account. When I set that up, it was a couple of years ago. I was serving as the president of the board, and at the time, very busy. I was very busy and very forgetful. And I would often, forget to write the check or send it in or bring the cash in on Sunday. And from my work on the board, I knew firsthand how each dollar I gave made possible the programs and the mission of this church. And I was and am committed to that endeavor. So my conviction called me to make good on my pledge amount, and the automatic withdrawal has made that an extremely easy and low hassle process. So I recommend. And I'm really thankful that I have that opportunity to give in that way. Contributing financially to this organization that deepens my faith and advances our shared goals is not a one-sided gift. Beyond the obvious effects that our gifts literally create our community, the act of giving financially is a blessing that is turned back on me when I look over my household budget every month. And I realize that this contribution, not unlike my phone bill or utilities or mortgage, reflects great privilege. And it is a blessing in and of itself to be able to give. Looking at my UU pledge on my personal budget, I know that there are things that I will cut before I would consider making a change in that line item. I have made the space in my budget for my values. Now, invariably, circumstances in life have and will cause us to reevaluate where we are able to give of our time and our monetary resources. But I strongly believe in the importance of that process of financially supporting the mission of the church at whatever level, and that cannot be overstated. The values that we uphold are precious, and they are worthy of our gifts. So I just want to encourage all of you today to reflect for a moment about how you co-create this community through your offerings and your gifts. Like me, has this community poured into you to help you define your values or vocation? Remembering the flame that Albert Schweitzer referenced, how have the gifts of this community lighted the flame within you? Personally, I believe we are all keepers of the flame, lit each week in the symbol of the chalice that we come together to share our joys and our sorrows, and to learn and be edified by each other's wisdom, and to stretch and to grow, and yes, to have uncomfortable conversations. Thank you for the opportunity to share. Asha, blessed be.
Good morning. Me again, but this time I get to speak from the heart and not from the script. Some of you may know that Mark and I have been on a long and often exhausting journey to get ourselves completely out of debt, and that we taught a Financial Peace University class at the church in January of this year, right before COVID ruined everything, to share the principles and processes that were allowing us to make that progress. I am happy to report that we will be 100% debt-free by my 30th birthday next month. And I already know one way we want to celebrate is to increase our financial pledge to the church. One of the things we learned in that Financial Peace University class is that if you don't have a clear plan for your resources will wander away and you'll be left wondering where they went. Our monthly household budget includes a line for giving to the church because our life is better when we do things with intentionality and on purpose. And we want to be sure that we support this community month in and month out. Our theme for this month is healing. And you may wonder what talking about stewardship could have to do with healing. But I can't tell you how healing it has been to heal our personal finances and to heal my own relationship with giving to a church community. It feels amazing to be free of the bills from my divorce lawyer and all our old medical debt. That's for dang sure. But it feels even better to be in a faith community that doesn't have any shame-based legalistic standards around giving and supporting the church. I grew up in a community where you filled out a form and declared down to the penny if you had paid a full tithe or not each year. And that never felt like the sort of joyful giving and receiving I experience in this community. This church feeds me, and so I want to feed this church. My pledge of whatever amount or format is what tells me that I belong to this community, and this community belongs to me. You and I belong to each other in ways that are uniquely human and you. And that way of belonging has been more healing in my life than I can ever say. I care too much about committing to that relationship with you to ever leave my giving to the off chance that I'll have some cash handy when the offering plate comes around on Sunday morning. I want my pledge to be a clear declaration that this community is my home, and I'm going to help build it. I want this community to be available for my children someday, and for every marginalized or justice-seeking person who hasn't yet found their spiritual home somewhere else. Stewardship is planting the trees that my grandchildren will climb, whose fruit I may never taste. My first year as a member of First UU, I couldn't make a financial contribution. So I fulfilled my pledge to this community by washing windows on church work days and singing in the choir and making deviled eggs for Friendly Feast Sundays. Remember those? One prominent theme from this year's pledge drive is that we need the time, talent, and treasure of our members and friends to sustain this community. So I really want to emphasize that whatever skill, whatever spare hour, whatever gift or resource you have to share, you will find a worthy home for it in this community. To quote today's offertory, what do we bring to show our love? What are the gifts that are ours alone? Body and spirit, heart and mind, making a world where all are home. Our interlude is Full of Love, performed by the virtual First UU Choir.